Now, if you're anything like me, you have my sympathy. But also you like using any camera you can get your grubby little mitts on, and then you end up sort of developing your favourites. I've made no secret about how much I love the Nikon D800, the Canon 400D, the Olympus EM10 Mark II and the Canon PowerShot G10, but there is one camera that, despite using extensively over the years and owning more times than any other camera, that I've never spoken about. And it's the camera that arguably started the mirrorless revolution. The Sony A7. Along with its higher resolution sibling, the A7R, these were the first full-frame mirrorless cameras with autofocus. Calm down, Leica M9 users, I did the reading. And at this point in time, based on what I've seen from looking around, these represent the cheapest way into full-frame mirrorless. My latest copy of the Sony A7 cost me just £275 used. Now this didn't come with its original box, and it came with a third-party battery. Not that that matters, because the NPFW50 batteries are absolutely abysmal whether they've got Sony stamped on them or not. But that's a whole lot of camera for the money. So what are you getting in this beautiful OG full-frame mirrorless camera? Now, first of all, this is very much a photo camera, given how it has very rudimentary video specs, doing only 1080p in a pretty low bitrate with no log profiles or fancy AF system. It does have a mic input though, so it can be useful if you're not after the highest video quality or slow motion, but I've shot these videos on the A7 in the past and it works fine. It'll do 1080p up to 60 frames per second in a 28 megabit per second AVC HD format. Nothing fancy, but as I said, it works fine. When it comes to photos though, that is where the A7 really shines. It has a 24 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor with 14 and a bit stops of dynamic range and great color depth, which is on par with most of your current full frame models. It has a hybrid AF system which has all of the focusing modes you would expect, but obviously being an older camera, it doesn't of course give you modern eye detection or all of the fancy tracking or any of that stuff. The ISO goes from 100 to 25,600, extendable from 50 to 51,200. And this is one of the areas where the camera starts to show its age. In short, not all Sonys are made equal in terms of high ISO performance, so don't expect A7S or A7 III type performance from the original A7. Now, looking around the camera, we've got the mode dial up top, the power switch at the base of the shutter button, an exposure compensation dial, one of the 3 custom buttons, and your standard hot shoe. There are dials on the front and rear which are both customizable, which in my case I've set to change aperture and shutter speed respectively in manual mode. Moving to the rear of the camera, we have all the usual suspects in terms of buttons, a tilty screen that isn't fully articulated and isn't a touchscreen. On the side here we have ports for mic input, headphones, micro USB for data transfer, and a micro HDMI. And on the other side we have a single SD card slot. The A7, like practically every Sony mirrorless camera before the A7 III, uses the absolutely abysmal NPFW50 battery, so if you're planning to get one of these cameras, buy lots of these batteries and a USB charger and a decent power bank. You're going to be sad if you don't. Regarding the menu system on the A7, I never really had any issues with finding what I needed, and many people slate the Sony menus, but I found a simple way to set it up once and then never really have to go in there again. Open up the menu, go to the cog menu and then to number 6. From here you can customize practically everything on the camera and map the buttons to suit your use. The most important one for me is the FN menu, and in here you can set up your 12 most used items and then quickly access them from the FN button at the rear of the A7. Add this to the custom buttons and you'll have quick access to everything you'll need, and you'll rarely, if ever, have to go digging through those menus again. Alright, so let's have a look at some images and some video from the Sony A7. I've definitely had better ideas. That little clip you just saw was shot with the iPhone 12 mini. And that camera, that phone camera, I trust absolutely in these conditions. The A7, not so much. Now, depending on what you read, you're going to get conflicting information regarding the weather sealing or environmental sealing on the A7. Now, I was under the impression it was weather sealed. In fact, I seem to remember a video with Kai way back when it was first released of him dumping a glass of water over it and stuff. But yeah, in my experience, not so much. There was one instance with a previous copy of the A7 where I was shooting these photos in Filey by the East Coast, and we had like a little summer shower kick off, and it was, you know, it lasted maybe 5-10 minutes at the most, you know, that kind of hazy, drizzly kind of business. Nothing startling, and I was trying to shield the camera as well, but the screen quit on me. It just died. I thought I'd killed the camera. Then 3 days later, it came back to life and was working fine, or it seemed to be working fine. So yeah, I would suggest, based on that alone, the weather sealing is not great on the A7. Something to bear in mind. Right, so the video you're seeing right now is being shot on the A7. It's just got a 28mm vintage lens on there, Vivitar job. It's a little Boya shotgun mic, the same one I used in the ZFC video, going straight into the camera. It's 1080p in 24 frames per second at ISO 800, yeah, ISO 800. So this is kind of what it looks like. I mean, on YouTube it's going to be upscaled to match the rest of my timeline to 4K, so you know, take that into account, but this is the kind of video look you can expect from this camera. Alright then, let's have a look at some images that were shot in conditions way nicer than this. Right, so who should be looking at buying a Sony A7 in 2024? I mean, to me, it's a photography camera. The video specs are so rudimentary at this point in time that you're better off using your phone for video. So unless you want to really like rig this thing out and, you know, use like vintage lenses and, you know, gimbals and all that kind of stuff, it's not a great video camera. You can get by with it if you want, you know, like kind of a rudimentary vlogging setup, but yeah, it's not the best. To me, if you want video features, you could do worse than going for Micro Four Thirds Lumix specifically. I mean, I'm using the GH5 now, and I'll probably use this thing until it dies because it literally has the best IBIS you can ask for. It has great colors, it has great picture profiles, it has great functionality, it has all of the codecs, and these cameras are designed with video in mind. So yeah, not really a video camera. So why did I buy the Sony A7 for the third time in 2024? For the same reason I have any full frame cameras at this point, and it's vintage lenses. Now, sure, I can adapt to my Canon full frame cameras with some of my lenses, but not all. And I already have all of the adapters for Sony. To replace all of those adapters for Canon is going to cost me pretty much the same amount of money as just buying an A7. A few little things about the A7 as well, which just give it the edge over the Canon 6D in terms of usability. Flippy screen. Makes life, it's silly, but it makes life very simple when you're getting low down, you're using vintage lenses for macro and extension tubes and things like that. The flippy screen is just like super useful. Not to mention focus peaking. I'm using manual lenses primarily with this camera, so focus peaking is one of those things that I really would like. You don't get that in the 6D. So why have I owned this 3 times? Why do I keep selling it? Well, it's never really been my main camera, so there are times when it just kind of sits on the shelf gathering dust and I'm looking at it thinking, might as well sell that, it's not getting used, and then I immediately want it again. This time though, I'm keeping it because it has a specific job. This is going to become my primary camera for vintage lenses, and this is the reason why I went with the A7 and not the A7R, because when you start going up in resolution, that high resolution starts to pick out all of those flaws in those vintage lenses, and I think 24 megapixels on a full frame sensor is that sweet spot, and the images that come out of this thing are absolutely gorgeous. Now of course I could use the vintage lenses on the Micro Four Thirds camera, I have done, but of course it doesn't cover the full image circle. You're that small sensor, so you're only getting like the center portion of the lens. So with lenses like the Helios and other others to, you know, that have that swirly out of focus areas and all of the goodness. A lot of that is lost with the smaller sensor. So yeah, vintage lenses all the way, baby. So for anybody who wants a camera, a full frame mirrorless camera with fantastic image quality at a pretty much steal of a price, the A7's a no-brainer. Now sure, if you want more megapixels, if you want to get fancy, you can get its higher resolution sibling, the A7R, which comes in at around £400 on average, and you do get that 36 megapixel sensor. But they are kind of the same camera. You know, there are a few differences, but it's kind of the same camera beyond that. Now, if you want more of the fluff features, more of the fancy stuff that make your life easier, the second generation Sonys are going to be a better option. But then you're also, price-wise, you're in the realms of things like your original Z6 on the used market, the Canon EOS RP as well, in that same kind of price bracket. And at a push, you might be even sort of leaning into Lumix S5 territory. But again, you know, at the very cheapest, you're already at almost double the price of the original A7. So if you're interested to see more from the original Sony A7, let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.